thank you, Eden. That was remarkable. Now you have some idea of why Mondo loved African drums. Those members of my family who are here, every time they visit California, we go to Venice Beach, and I would recount those sessions to Mondo. And every Sunday in the old days, there used to be a group of African drummers, and I mean 15 or 20 with the tall drums that are that high. And they'd gather around one of the areas there, and they would drum for several hours. And Mondo said, you've got to give me a recording of that. Well, I never got around to giving him a recording of it, but he had much of that music in his cage, as he said. Next on the agenda is someone who needs no introduction, so I'm not going to do much. I would tell particularly the younger people who are here, Angela Davis is an activist, a scholar, and a writer who advocates and has all of her life for the oppressed, wherever the oppressed are from. She has been a supporter of Mondo's case and Mondo, and visited him when her busy schedule allowed. It was a pleasure to see her in Lincoln as often as possible. So with some remarks, here is the internationally famous Dr. Angela Davis.
Well, they say the Spirit will not descend without song. Certainly, the Spirit has descended upon us this morning. It is truly an honor to participate in this ceremony for Mondo Langa here at the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, with so many people who have fought for Mondo's and Ed's freedom over the years. And let me say warm greetings to the family. I have often been accused of being an inveterate optimist. But I never thought that Mondo would die before he was released from prison. He deserved to be free, not only because he was innocent of the charges that kept him in prison, not only because he was so clearly a victim of alcohol, firearms and tobacco agency, of the FBI, of COINTELPRO, but also because Mondo knew much more about the meaning of freedom than most people who unconsciously experience life in the so-called free world. Toni Morrison once said to graduating students, "The function of freedom is to free someone else." The function of freedom is to free someone else. In other words, freedom is meaningless if one thinks of it as a quality of an individual. Freedom is meaningful only when it is collective, only when it is an ongoing practice that urges and teaches others to strive for freedom. If freedom is an ongoing striving, if freedom is a practice that assists others to be free, then Wopashitwe Mondo Eyen Langa was freer than most people on this planet. Mondo Langa was free because he helped to free countless numbers of people who then helped to free others. Each time I had the privilege of meeting with Mondo for short periods of time in the penitentiary in Lincoln, I always emerged feeling more empowered by his words, more determined because of his persistence, more willing to advance the struggle for justice and equality and freedom, because I had witnessed the miracle of a man locked up for decades who still profoundly believed in the possibility of freedom. And from the first time I visited Mondo, I think I came to Omaha for the first time shortly after my own trial. I had the opportunity to see Ann Elsa, who was here at that time, Lennox Hines, the attorney, Charlene Mitchell. I should say that after the conclusion of my trial, we created an organization called the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. And the case of David Rice and Ed Poindexter was one of the first cases we took on. Oftentimes we assume that when we speak about oppressive circumstances like slavery, like imprisonment, that we have to describe the violence of those circumstances, the violence that is done to the body and the spirit. We think we have to describe the negative characteristics of those institutions, but we often forget that the miracle consists precisely in the capacity to find ways to live a life of freedom while being subjected to the worst forms of dehumanization. The feat is to become increasingly human in the face of all of the efforts to dehumanize. And this is what Mondo taught me. Each time I have visited him, I have felt transformed by his amazing sense of humor. And I should say I never expected that I would laugh so much inside those walls with Mondo, and feel transformed by his ability to create joy in a situation where everything militates against happiness and pleasure and freedom. Mondo never boasted about his accomplishments, but he rehabilitated more people in the time he was behind bars than the institution ever did during the entire period. And I was once in a restaurant just having dinner, and the chef came out and said that he had been in prison and that he had been touched by Mondo, and it was Mondo who told him that he could do what he wanted to do, that he wanted to attend culinary school and open a restaurant. And he attributed the fact that he had realized his dream to the impact that Mondo had upon him. I could tell many other stories like that, but I also wanted to share one of Mondo's poems, because it seems to me that it is the poets, the artists, who show us the way, who have the imagination to direct us along paths about which we know little. And the poem I want to share is entitled "When It Gets to This Point," because of the current movement against police violence, institutional racism. So Mondo wrote, Michael Brown. I had never heard of him, and had never heard anything he'd done before the news of his death came. Whoever he might have become, whatever he might have achieved had he lived longer, not been riddled lifeless by bullets from Darren Wilson's gun and crumpled on the pavement of a Ferguson street for more than 4 hours in the heat of that August day. And before I had never heard of Trayvon Martin, had never known of who he was until I learned of his demise and cause of death, a bullet to the chest. George Zimmerman, the shooter, a badgeless pretend police with a pistol and fear of the darkness, Trayvon's darkness. And after a while, the pictures, the names, the circumstances run together like so much colored laundry in the wash that bleeds on whites. Was it Eric Garner or Tamir Rice, who was 12 but seen as 20? Hulk Hogan or the Hulk with demonic eyes, it was said, who shrank the cop in Ferguson into a 5-year-old who had to shoot, just had to shoot. And John Crawford III in a Walmart store aisle an air rifle in his hands he'd pick up from the shelf and held in the open in an open carry state? Was it John or someone else killed supposedly by mistake in a dark stairwell? I know Akai Gurley fell. I hadn't heard of him before, nor of Amadou Diallo or Sean Bell prior to their killings. Which of these two took slugs in the greater number? I don't recall. My memory is too encumbered with the names of so many more before and since. The frequent news reports of non-arrests, non-indictments, non-true bills, and duplicitous presentations by, quote, experts in the field, the consultants put out front to explain away that which is so often plain as day, to coax and convince us that we're the ones who can't see straight and can't hear clearly. We who are the ones replacing facts with spin to mislead and mystify, as the beatings and the chokings and shootings of our boys and men by these wrong arms of the law proceed in orderly fashion before the sometimes sad, sometimes angry faces of our uncertain, our hesitant disbelief. Mondo has joined the ancestors. Mondo has joined the ancestors. Mondo is finally free. It is up to us to carry out his legacy. So let us protect Assata Shakur. Let us free Ed Poindexter. Let us free Mumia Abu-Jamal. Let us free Leonard Peltier. Let us free all political prisoners. Mondo Langa presente.
Thank you for those stirring remarks, Dr. Davis. And now we're going to hear from the president of the Nebraskans for Justice, which has taken on the chores that we knew as youngsters of the Rice Poindexter Committee and have done a yeoman job. Here is the president, Tariq Al-Amin.
Hotel. Got a couple things here first. One thing, Billy X mentioned Emory Douglas. Emory Douglas was pegged early on as the official artist of the Black Panther Party. And if you go to his website, if you Google him, you'll see what his work, what type of work he did. He was the one who sent us the email with this picture here. That's from Emory. And also mention how, just to tell you how Mondo made those immediate and lasting friendships. Ed told me last week that how he and Mondo met was prior to him being in the Panthers, and I said the day before. Some of y'all might remember who were here. I wasn't in Omaha at the time. But he said there was an old club at 24th and Ames. At 24th and Ames, he said there was a club where he walked in, and Mondo was on stage singing the blues. And after he came off, he approached him and told him how good he was and asked him if that was something he had been doing all the time. And Mondo said, no, it was just something I work at. And the more they talked, Mondo asked him, he goes, hey, did you know there's a Black Panther Party meeting tomorrow? And I said, no, I don't know much about him. He goes, well, let's go to the meeting. And that was all it took. That was the first time we met was when he saw me. And also, you might think, I had told Marshall that we're kind of warm up here, so could he open the door? But the truth is, in case I say something y'all don't like, I can get to that door. You know, also what happens, I'm the last person on this program, and I feel like I'm always being tested. I opened up the program this morning, and I saw Mike had changed my mission. So I'm flexible. Like I said, always being tested. All I'm going to say about police violence is that it's no different from when it was happening back in the 60s. What really changed things nowadays, as far as the awareness, and that was after the Rodney King case. Once that happened, now people have these cell phones and video, and we're getting more of the information quickly, and the police aren't the only source of the information. So that's the difference. And so that struggle still continues. So when I had about 6 years on the police force, Mondo had asked Buddy to bring me down to a Harambe meeting. And I really didn't know what to expect going in, but I came out blown away by the knowledge espoused during that meeting. To be honest, I was a little intimidated, and I knew I had homework to do. So after attending a few meetings, I was asked to be, at that time, what they called an outside coordinator. And at first, the meetings were held in the visiting room, and that's when you first walk in up the stairs in that main building. And but one day, I'm gonna tell you what it was like. They told me, I showed up, and they told me, you got to walk across the yard. I'm like, okay, here we go. That's another day, another story. But under the leadership, tutelage, and mentoring and persistence of Mondo, you can see men, young and old, transforming, changing their self-image and self-discipline. Mondo was a true educator. He did not acquire knowledge to put in his pocket and let others see how smart he was. He shared in a humble way and encouraged others to study. No matter the official position he held within the organization, he was always looked to as a leader. Many inmates will tell you that you didn't have to be a member of Harambe to seek his counsel. Prison did not make or shape Mondo into the person that he was. The person that this building is named for, Malcolm X, he went into the prison as Malcolm Little. He came out as Malcolm X. David Rice was not allowed to come out as Mondo. Just think, if he had not been a victim of a racist, corrupt system and had spent the last 45 years working hands-on in the community, what kind of impact he could have had. That dedication that he had educating, advocating, organizing, and the upliftment of others, he took that to prison with him. So don't think for a minute that the prison made the man. And you've heard a lot today about Mondo's intellect. And as Samuel L. Jackson would say, the big brain on Mondo. So, but I'm going to tell y'all something that hasn't been mentioned. Mondo was also an athlete. Yeah, he was, truly. One day, if you know the layout of the prison, when you go in, there's a softball field and a football field over to the side, a little area that could play football. So I walked in, as I approached the activity center, I could see somebody out there scampering around and pretty much getting in the way. So when Mondo looked up and saw me, he told me, he goes, hey, I gotta go. And nobody in the group said, hey, wait a minute, say one more play, we gotta do this. It was like, bye. So, and then I swore I heard somebody say, y'all better not tell him when we play again. So he did a lot, he was a very versatile person. And people mentioned how he used to always go around barefooted. And that's true, he was even out there playing football barefooted. But sometimes you go around the institution, you have to put on your shoes. So one day I'm there, and I don't know how to describe him. There's some other than those moccasins that he made, those he would slide on. But he had some tennis shoes. Just like those thick New Balance or something with the rubber, look like bumpers on them or something. So there he is standing there, and he looked like a chicken wearing cowboy boots. So I chose to say, bro, you need to take them shoes off. We'd rather look at your dusty toes than look at this. So we laughed a bit and went on. But in all seriousness, everyone knows Mondo was somewhat small in stature. As has been said before, he was a giant of a man. And if it does exist, may he rest in paradise.
You have no idea what the previous speaker has gone through in his life. He mentioned he was an Omaha police officer, but he was actually the kind of police officer that is envisioned. He actually was doing the work of the community and actually protecting the community. For that, he was ostracized and every other kind of sized you can think of, and was an active participant and leader in an organization that was formed by African officers of conscience called the Midwest Guardians. And he continues to do work in the community. even though he doesn't wear a uniform anymore, he still wears the uniform of a protector of the oppressed. Now, Leo, I skipped an order, and if you come forward, I'd like to play for you the last call that Mondo made to prison radio shortly before his death, and I want you to listen to it carefully so that you'll understand how he wants to be remembered. He doesn't actually specify that, but if you read between the lines, you'll understand.
I am Wopashitwe Mondo Eyen Langa, Mondo for short, calling from the state joint in Langa, Nebraska. The last time we talked, I explained that the reason it had been so long since I had called in was, health problems related to this COPD and having to make a couple of trips downtown to the hospital on the outside. But I also mentioned that I had seen the new documentary, Black Panther Party, Vanguard of the Revolution. And it was really pretty good. I was, of course, not surprised, but disappointed that there was no mention that I caught of the Midwest chapters, namely Omaha, Des Moines, Iowa, and Kansas City, Missouri. This is not atypical. Most of the books, documentaries and so forth, that we see or read of the Black Panther Party do seem to ignore the existence of the Midwest chapters, almost as if we not only function, almost as if we not only did not function, were not relevant, but did not even exist. Fortunately, there is an article that just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's on BuzzFeed, called The Forgotten Panthers, which does talk at least about my and Ed's case in Nebraska.
These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.
So two things from that. One is that Mondo at the end felt some despair, or at least I would call it that. It might be disappointment would be a better word, in that the message of what he and the Panthers did in Omaha and throughout the Midwest is not really that well known, not so much throughout the country and throughout the world. It probably is better known there, but not so much in our own community. And that's our responsibility. As we go forth from this place today, if we do nothing else, and I hope we do a lot more, we need to do anything we can to educate the community here in Omaha about the sacrifices that these brothers and sisters made, including surrendering their lives so that our lives might be better. And the other thing he mentioned there was an article, actually there are a couple of them, on BuzzFeed.com. If you haven't visited that site, it would be good if you are technology abound to take a look at BuzzFeed.com. In the search, just put Mondo or Mondo Langa, and you will be transformed to some degree. Now we'd like to hear remarks from the family, Shanita and Melissa and Michael Rice, nieces and a nephew Michael. So if you would come in that order, one after the other, and give your remarks at this time.
Jumbo. I want to thank everybody for coming here today, and it's been very interesting to hear the political aspect of my Uncle Mondo. I come from a different perspective, being his niece. So I'm going to go a little different way today in remembrance of him and read a letter that I wrote. Dear Uncle Mondo, as you look down on us from wherever your spirit is today, you surely see all these people here to honor and celebrate your time on this earth. Many here today call you friend, some call you brother, ex-Black Panther. Many here have never met you, but feel a connection to you that drew them here today. I am one of few that can call you uncle. When I found out that I was speaking today, I found it very difficult to put into words what our relationship really was over the last 37 years. As the oldest, I feel I have a different perspective about growing up with you as my uncle. See, to me, you weren't a political prisoner. You were not inmate number 27768. You were simply my Uncle Mondo. No one special, no one fancy. The first time I met you, as the story goes, Grandma kidnapped me from daycare, drove to Lincoln to make sure she introduced my Uncle Mondo to his brand new Shnita. He went by Uncle Mondo, Uncle Louie at this point. Now, I don't remember this meeting, but I do know that my grandma wanted to make sure that you and I had a relationship, that we grew together, because she was awesome like that. Well, you know her. Growing up, I remember visiting you in Lincoln, wondering why we had to come all the way here to see you, this big scary jail. Why did we have to get patted down? Why escorted to the visiting room? Why can't you just come to Grandma's house? But then Grandma would take me out and we'd get your candy from the vending machines, a pop, some chips, and she actually got you them cigarettes. Impatiently, I would wait in the visiting room. You'd finally walk in through the door. Melissa and I would run up and give our Uncle Mondo a hug, as you were being called now. After we'd hug it out, we'd go and play on the Jiggle Gym while you would talk to Grandma, Mom, and Dad. See, I didn't know what you had done to keep you here, but I do know that when we came, Grandma was happy. My dad was happy, so I was happy. And then, of course, very sad when it was time to see you, time to leave. Why is he not coming with us, I would think. Now, I'm sure Mom and Dad explained it to me in a way that I could comprehend, but I don't think I fully understood. When I was 8 or 9 years old, you sent me a tape telling me the story of your incarceration. I remember sitting in front of the stereo listening to your voice explain and recap your history. Your story made me sad, and it made me mad. I started to understand, and over the next few years, we would correspond over the phone when you would call us in Texas, and when we moved back to Omaha, Grandma would hop us in that car, and off Lincoln we would go. Now, by the time I reached college, I fully understood what was going on. With my education and me educating myself, honestly, I was torn between supporting my uncle and his opinions of this world, and yet to be truthful to you about the path I was planning on taking, because I wanted to be a teacher. I remember you told me you didn't think that I should be teaching the European version of history to our Black children. And this pissed me off. I mean, you and I didn't agree, yet this is my path, and I kind of felt like you didn't support it. And I know you're still proud of me. Grandma sent you info. You saw articles about me in the college newspaper. And I want to tell the story. So one day I come back from class, and I come into my dorm room, and my roommate, she says, Shanita, your Uncle Mondo called for you. And I was like, my Uncle Mondo's in prison. How did he call? And she's like, I don't know, but he said, call from this time to this time at this number. And it was after that time. So I was like, well, let's give it a call, see what happens. So I called back, and some lady answered, and I was like, is Mondo available? And she's like, who? And I was like, David Rice, let's go that way. So she puts me on hold and she comes back and she's like, he's a prisoner here. And I was like, oh, sorry. I really hope that I didn't get him in trouble for that, because I'm pretty sure he wasn't supposed to be calling me, but he did. And it was around this time that I kind of stepped back from our relationship. I still attended Nebraskans for Peace meetings, demonstrations at the state capitol, even speaking to my Black history class when we discussed COINTELPRO. Because even if we didn't see eye to eye, you're my uncle. You were innocent and you deserve justice. But we did drift apart as the next few years went by. Our last visit was about a month before you passed. You were in the infirmary, small, weak, but not broken, still strong in mind. We talked about your time spent inside the joint the last 40 years, your opinion on today's events, and thank you for answering the questions I always wanted to ask, was too scared to. You sang. I never knew you could sing. And I'm kind of mad that was the first time I had to hear it. But I'm so glad that I was able to have that final time with you. And when I found out you passed, I was released that you were no longer a caged bird. You were free to fly. And yet now I feel like I should have done more for you. Maybe I should have shouted louder for your release. Maybe I should have written you more. Definitely should have visited you more. Maybe I should have been a better niece. So when we finish where I began, I still don't know how to express, explain, break down the kind of relationship Uncle Mondo, you and I had. But I do know that, again, I'm one of the few that can call you Uncle. So Uncle, you taught me to be truthful. Uncle, you showed me how to persevere. Uncle, you showed me to never give up. Uncle, you taught me to be proud of myself. Uncle, you taught me to be proud of my heritage and to never forget where I came from. And Uncle, you told me that a Black Panther is an African cat. So until we meet again.
Good morning. About 7 minutes left into the morning. I thought we were all going to come up here together. So I had my brother. Yeah, I don't. Okay. I'm Melissa Rice. I'm also Uncle Mondo's niece. I want to thank everybody for coming here, joining us at the Malcolm X Center. I live in Stratford, Connecticut. As soon as I heard about my uncle's passing, I was making any and every arrangement to get here. So I just appreciate all of you who are coming from wherever you're coming from. Thank you. You and I, the Rices have like some really strong genes, because what I'm about to say almost sounds identical to what you're about to say, even though you live like 14 miles away from Mama and Daddy, but that's okay. I'm just going to read because I'm not really a public speaker. But we'll see. Many of you know Uncle Mondo, one half of the Omaha 2, the political prisoner who was held captive for over 45 years. Believe it or not, as a child growing up, I do not remember ever asking why Uncle Mondo was in prison. He had a spirit that blinded those prison walls for me, it seemed. He was so much more than what everybody here has even seen. He was a son, he was a brother, an uncle, a teacher, and a friend. I too remember in the 1980s driving to Lincoln with my family to visit Uncle Mondo. The very first memory I have of him was adopting my siblings and I with African names. He called me Karima, meaning generous or giving. I wasn't sure how this name suited me until I became a registered nurse. I feel in my heart Uncle Mondo knew 30 years ago what my passion in life would be. I also remember his humor, his words of wisdom, and the love he showed all of us. They weren't sad or awkward visits by any means. It was family time, and I actually enjoyed it. Unfortunately, as the years went on, visits became less frequent, but we always seemed to speak when he called his mother, who is Vera, my grandmother. For those of you who know me, you know that Vera was my best friend. Vera was also Uncle Mondo's best friend. He would call our house every Saturday and talk to my siblings and I first, because we always answer the phone, about the importance of education. He talked to us about current events, and he would always, always, always encourage us to read. I'd ask how he was doing, and he would always give some long, poetic answer that I really, really did not understand until I got older. We would say our see you laters. I'd hand the phone to my grandma, and they would have their mother-son time. As the years passed, I began looking more into my Uncle Mondo's case. I started asking my dad and my grandma questions about his life. As an adult, I would visit every chance I could when I came to Nebraska. I wrote more, I read more. My grandmother passed away in 2013, and the very first thought that came to my mind was Uncle Mondo did not get to say goodbye. No, I'm gonna be all right. I got this. The last time I saw my Uncle Mondo was in November, which was my last visit to Omaha. He was walking very slowly. He had oxygen connected to his walker, and as a registered nurse, I knew exactly what that meant. It took him an hour to reach us in the visitor center from the infirmary, but it did not matter. I would have waited an eternity to see my uncle. Everyone in that room knew my uncle. Staff, inmates, visitors, people would call me to this day. Oh, Mondo's your uncle, Mondo's your uncle. Oh, you gotta get me in to visit him. You gotta get me in to visit him. And there was so much pride. To this day, there's just so much pride in my heart. It often hurt me to know that he did not get to experience all that life really has to value here on the outside. It is, however, comforting to know that even as a prisoner, as a caged bird, as we think of it, he used his life to better and inspire those around him. His transition from this earth is only physical. Every poem he wrote, every piece of art he created, every smile he gave, every joke he made, it continues to live on through us. It's a blessing to see people literally all over the world pay homage to such a humble person. We all must accept that some chapters in our lives have to close without closure. It sits well with my heart and soul that he's now with his greatest supporter, my grandma. And I know they are both in true peace. Uncle Mondo has escaped his cage. His wings are stretched out and he's now flying. So I love my Uncle Mondo. Thank you.
Give you guys a chance to wipe your eyes or something. I'm Mike, I'm Mondo's nephew. I didn't have anything written down or anything. I just wanted to speak from my heart because that's the easiest way to do it. If I was going to write something down, I'd probably have maybe 5 or 6 pages, and we don't have all the time in the world. So I remember Mondo when we were younger, my mom and my dad, and going down there with my sisters, and I might have been about 5 years old. And we used to come up from Texas, and every time we'd come up, we would visit him, and I remember vaguely just him describing his case to us when we were, younger and talking about it and not really grasping what was going on with it till I got older. When we finally moved back to Omaha, I used to spend a lot of time over at my grandma's house and hanging around with my grandma a lot. She would talk about Louie and talk about his case, and anybody that would talk bad about his case, she didn't want anything to do with it. If you had a negative thing to say about her, till her dying days, she did not watch Channel 7 News because they didn't have. I remember she couldn't stand Carol Schrader or somebody, and she used to just go off, and I'd watch Judge Judy. The news would come on afterwards, and she'd say, "Turn that station, turn to Channel 8 or 5 or whatever. Don't put that on there." But so she really loved him. She was his biggest advocate. She would always answer the call. She was 90 years old, riding down there to Lincoln, going in there to see him. I know that can't be the easiest thing with, she had diabetes and arthritis and all that stuff, but she would still make it down there to see her son. And that's love right there. And I remember when he used to call and he would, when the prison would call, you get those calls that say, "You have a collect call from Wopashitwe Mondo Eyen." I'm sorry if I butchered it, but I remember being a little kid and the phone ringing and I picking up and say, "Do you accept the charges?" Well, I just knew him as Uncle Mondo. So I said no. I hung up. Grandma comes in the kitchen, she's cooking or something. I was like, "Who was that?" Somebody wanted to collect call from somebody. I told him no. And so after that, I never saw her run across there so much and say, "No, that's your uncle. When it says Mondo, you need to just go ahead and accept that call." So I always realized that. I was always, sitting back. He would, as a child, he would send us Christmas gifts, and he would send us like African books. And I remember one book very specifically. It was Jumbo Means Hello, and to this day, it's still we've never gotten rid of it. It's still over at my parents' house. But later on, speaking to him, I would talk to him about that book. Like, we still have that book, and he thought that was great because that was his way of trying to be the best uncle that he could be, by making sure we didn't lose our African identity. Making sure, because he knew that the stuff they were teaching us in schools wasn't going to reflect our culture. So he always wanted us to have that identity and to know who we were, be proud of who we were. Most people, if they have an uncle that's, accused of such a crime, they would be embarrassed about it. But anytime I would walk around, I would be proud of my name, Rice. I would love it. If anybody would say, "Are you related to David Rice or Mondo Eyen?" I'd say, "Yes, that's my uncle." I was proud of it. If anybody ever had any bad thing to say about it, we would get into a little heated discussion. I'd tell them to go look up the facts because, the facts don't lie. And as years go on, and as I would get older and, talk with Mondo and started learning more about his case, I remember very specifically, must have been about 13, 14, right when the internet started coming out and you could look up stuff on the internet. And I remember one day me and my buddy were standing in the garage and my dad was in there. And we were talking about the case, me and my buddy, and my dad comes out. And we asked him, "Do you really think he did it?" And what he said, "Michael, I remember being young and Louie and his buddies would come over and they would work on their cars. And they didn't know how to change their brakes or anything on their cars. How the hell do you think they can build a bike?" So that sticks with you for all these years. That stuck with me. And also, I need to learn how to change some brakes too. But as years went on, and I got older, and I didn't keep in contact as much with them as I would like to during my teenage years. But when I got older, and when my grandma's health started failing, I reconnected with them, sent them a letter just to touch base with them and all that. And we started corresponding back and forth, and he would ask me questions about how my life was going. He even would ask me that I still had Gus, which was a one I had when my grandma got me when I was 6, 7 years old. Gus had been 5, 6 years dead by then. He still remembered Gus because he would keep track of us and everything that we had going on in our lives, how old we were, what school we were going to, what our hobbies were, and all that. And I remember just going up there and just sitting in there when I finally first was able to visit him. Going there, it was like a long lost friend. We just embraced for about 2 minutes. I told him how much I missed him and, wish he was out here so we could, so I could have an uncle, because he's been locked away for so many years, but you have to remember we lost an uncle too. We missed out on having that relationship with him and the knowledge that he can impart and all the things that he can teach us. But being with him and, sitting there talking with him, I realized he was very funny. He always had some little jokes to tell. Some of them were pretty corny, I'm going to admit, but they always made you laugh. He always made you think about things. He would bring up cases and tell you to listen to different things and check out everything. He didn't want you to just stay stagnant. You know, he wanted you to be like a river and keep flowing. He didn't want you to be like a little puddle. And just, you know. But he was a great uncle. Only thing I can remember really right now that, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but anybody that's taken a picture with Mondo, when you're sitting there talking with him and picture time comes and he has the tickets and whatnot, he's the most excited person to take the picture. And he'll get up there and run and get up there. Then once you take the picture, but I didn't know he was doing that. So by the time the picture was developed, they would give us a picture back. I just wish I could have got a picture with him smiling, but I understood why he didn't smile, because he can't sit there and make it seem like everything's all honky-dory and everything's all happy. And even though he was locked up, and we talked about this, it wasn't going to stop him from doing work. In his letters that he wrote to me, he always said he had work to do. There was always work to do. He said he was in the infirmary, but he couldn't wait to get out because he had work to do. There's still plenty of work to be done. And then anybody that I ever meet from around the community or that was incarcerated with him or just knew him from before then said he was a great man. They said he had nothing but respect. I've met correctional officers that say he didn't like to wear shoes, but he had a lot of respect in there. So that carries a lot of weight. And I mean, I'm just going to miss him. I mean, I'm going to carry on his legacy as a Rice. I just thank everybody that's worked on this case. And just remember, we still have work to do. There's still somebody locked up over it right now that we need to free. There's many more that are locked up for cases they didn't do, and I just thank you all for showing up.
Their parents can be very proud of these young people. And Michael's a senior. Is that the right way to say that? That was Michael Todd, the nephew, and Mondo's brother Michael is there, and brother Kim, who's also known as Charles. At this time, we're already over our limit we expected to be. I think we're still within a reasonable amount of time, and I know how this can get out of hand, so I'm going to try to ask you to be respectful. Irvin McSwain, who was a friend and neighbor of Mondo, is going to begin a 2-minute session. And if you feel that you can make your remarks in 2 minutes, you're welcome to come up. So with that, Reverend Irvin McSwain, who's the investigator.
A minister came out of the church, and a little boy rode up to the church on his bicycle, put the kickstand down, and said, hey, mister, hey, mister, hey, mister, does God live in that house? The minister pondered for a moment, and he said, you know, sometimes I wonder. Mondo went through a lot, but he never gave up faith. He did question the veracity of some preachers, though, and some ecumenical churches, like I'm sure some of you do. We'll miss him. To Michael, to Kim, to the Rice family, and to all of you, my brothers and sisters, greetings. We've heard some beautiful, outstanding presentations, and we saw an outstanding, stupendous dance from one Sandra McSwain. I'm always in awe when I see her perform. Mondo and the McSwain family grew up about a block away from each other. just a block. We grew up when the hood had neighbor in it. It was the neighborhood. We grew up when we knew the neighbor, when it was common to borrow some flour or some sugar. And I'm talking about the granulated kind. You went to the neighbor, knocked on the door, borrow some sugar. Churches were open 24/7. Anybody remember that? If someone knocked on your door, you said, "Come in," even if you didn't know who it was. Those days are gone now. Now we have deadlocks, security locks, security alarms. We have barking dogs to let you know somebody's here. Mondo showed greatness even at a young age in a plethora of ways. He was always showing intellect and showing interest in history. As a student of history, you know that we didn't come over here on the Love Boat. Yes, my ancestors came over here on slave ships. Mondo taught about the millions of black people who died during the Middle Passage. And like our Jewish brothers and sisters, Mondo taught it will never, ever happen again. As slaves, so it's called sometimes, we were able to escape the atrocities that no other group has ever suffered on this side of eternity. In Genesis 15:13, briefly it says this: "Know of a surety that your seed will be in a strange land that's not theirs, and they will suffer 400 years, but they will come out sumptuously." That time is here, y'all. That time to come out is here. You will come out sumptuously. Now, there's a strong relationship between Genesis 15:13 and Africans born in America. 400 years of slavery. And we're coming out. Somebody say we're coming out. We're coming out. Mondo was influenced by people like Malcolm X, and you've heard some of the other names. W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, first African-American man who sat on the Supreme Court. Crispus Attucks, first to die in the American Revolution. Mondo taught about Rosa Parks, who sat down so that we could stand up. Ida B. Wells, outstanding female journalist, civil rights activist. Fannie Lou Hamer, I love that woman. She said, "You can pray until you faint, but until you get up and do something for yourself, God ain't gonna put it in your lap." She said, "You might say, well, I ain't getting in the mess. But if you were born with a black face, you were already in the mess." Fannie Lou Hamer. Harriet Tubman. She freed 1,000 slaves. And she said, if they only knew, I would have saved 1,000 more. If they only knew they were slaves. She was the Moses of her day. She freed our people. And it was kind of interesting how she did it. Because although they took our name, they took our religion, they took everything but what was in here and what was in here. And you heard them sitting down by the riverside. And you might hear something like this: "Lord, I, poor pilgrim of sorrow, I'm down in the world, I'm all alone. But I've heard of a city called heaven, and I'm trying to make that city my home. See, they were looking for the home up north. Slave masters thought they were just happy-go-lucky, but they were sending a message to Harriet Tubman, I'm going home. And as I close, let us carry on Mondo's legacy and Ed's legacy. I went to school with Ed for a while and grew up with Mondo, beautiful family. The grandchildren talked about their grandma Vera. She was an outstanding woman. So when you see Michael behaving like he does, very erudite young man, very learned, you can look at his mother and say, oh, that's where he got that from. A very beautiful family, and their legacy lives on in this community. I feel honored to say these few words. Thank you for your patience, and the fight goes on. Amen.
Peace and blessings to the Rice and family of Mondo. Peace and blessings to everyone. I am because we are. I painted this last night with the sun behind a tree. And the sun is a representation of Brother Mondo and all of his warm energy that has been a gift to us for his time on earth. My son, Zaid Sharif Zakir Ibn El Gainslawaru, he passed January 2015, and I would say he's a fellow artist and barefoot messenger of sorts that lived and is now breathing in spirit amongst us with Brother Mondo. And so my son and Mondo are inspiration in this piece. What I want you to notice is that this tree has roots, and the roots go off of the canvas. You can't see where the ends of those roots are because our roots go so deep, all the way to motherland Africa, and we should all be thankful for our gift of life and what we are here to do and live purposefully and to make all of our ancestors and the heavenly host proud. I want you to see the branches that stretch here. These branches are reaching out like all of our arms and our hands reach out to touch another life. As Brother Mondo touched so many lives, and everyone in here is exhibiting greatness inside God gave you to make a difference in someone else's world. We have to do this. When Edom was drumming, I felt this charge of energy from the spiritual realm saying, we can't let down our African American young boys, our brothers, our sisters, the girls. We have to teach them what Brother Mondo was saying, not that Eurocentric perspective history. We have to include the heroes and sheroes of the brown-skinned African diaspora every day in education until the greatness sinks in and all of these complications and systemic oppression, white racism problems can dissolve. We'll work tirelessly until there is better change coming. All this warmth. I'll read to you what I wrote on the side. This is a word, a blessing for Mondo's family, because he was such a great artist. I say artists are ones who work in so many different art forms or media. You may not see it up on a wall, you may, but it may just be the art of social change. Hallelujah. Life is art, and art is life. which reflects the work of the ultimate artist of all, to whom we belong. From God we come, and to God we return. Swiftly to the light and love which we are born from, to return to our purest energy form and enter the oneness that encompasses omnibenevolence. That is the greatest freedom and peace. I invite anyone who is comfortable with this expression to put some green paint on your finger, any of your fingers, and touch this to add life to this tree. And I have a station set up in the back where there's refreshments and where Leo's pointing back there. Leo, thank you. He's power to the people. So please, if you want to do that kind of expression, and then as it dries, I want the family to take this piece if you'll have it. Thank you. And thank you, Sister Dr. Davis, for saying something about poets and artists, because I think we're all artists in some way, shape, or form. And to honor the Black Panthers of Omaha and Emory Douglas, there is a mural on 42nd and Bedford that I'm mentioning, not for credit to me, but Brother Ben Jones, who is of anti-oppression art in Lincoln, Nebraska, and who also fought for Mondo's freedom and has been spreading his love and art forms all over. Very talented. He and I joined together and we did that mural, and it honors Malcolm X, it honors the Black Panthers. It says on there, "Our freedom can't wait." Remember that.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I'm going to be really brief. My name is Latina Rencher. I am one of the best friends of Melissa Rice, the niece of Mondo. And a couple commonalities that Mel and I have. For one, our last initials are the same. And we went to junior high and high school together, and we graduated at the same time. We were great friends growing up. And when we graduated, we noticed the graduation order, alphabetical order, and she and I were sitting right next to each other. And I remember us going across the stage, and I had to wait for her because she didn't want to trip and fall, and if she did, she wanted me to hold her. But another commonality that we have is we are both nieces of revolutionists. I am the great niece of Ernie Chambers. My grandmother, Alice, is his big sister. And I don't think Mel knew that about me immediately, and I didn't know about Mondo immediately. I was introduced to the story of Mondo as a young adult. My mother, Barbara Lynn Russ, is great friends with Tariq Alameen, and she was in the Native Omaha Day Parade in 2005, I believe, where they all rode on horseback, and they had banners and T-shirts that said "To Free Nebraska Political Prisoners," and they had a picture of Ed Poindexter and Mondo on the shirt. And to this day, I still have that shirt. My mother has long since suffered a stroke, and she's in a care facility. And so as we were going through her things, my sisters were kind of getting rid of some of the things that she had, and they never knew about this shirt. And when they pulled it out, I said, "Don't you get rid of that. Give me that." So I have that at home. It's one of my most prized treasures, but it's very funny how everything comes full circle, and how we end up being of service, how Mondo was pretty much able to call from the beginning what Mel's calling would be. And as being the niece of the defender of the downtrodden, Ernie Chambers, I kind of didn't have a choice. But I did have a choice, but I chose the right choice. And as I work with the youth of North Omaha through the Urban League of Nebraska, and it is one of my greatest honors, and I know that I'm following the legacy of amazing people like Ed Poindexter, Mondo, our community, my Uncle Ernie, the people who stand behind them. One of my uncle's best friends, Dan Goodwin, I see you. But I'm just very thankful for what he's done for us, for the young population, for the young people who are very much awakening into the struggle, and they're not bypassing it as this is just something that we hear about, because if we leave it to sole education in our school district, we never know about this. So I thank you all for your support for the Rice family. Mel, you know I love you. And it is a beautiful sight here today to pay homage to such a wonderful man. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Wyshaw Davis. My big brother is in the Nebraska State Penitentiary, and he's in his 30th year. He was given a life sentence, and he's a political prisoner. However, that wasn't his original charge, but thanks to Brother Mondo, he converted in there. But he's also right now the president of Harambe, and he wrote this piece, a poem for Brother Mondo, and it's called Comrade Mondo's Salute. He says, for all the times you taught us to be strong African men born in America, that is America KKK, we all thank you. We were young warriors without direction, sentenced to more years than we actually had on earth. So it seemed you pointed us to Malcolm, Ben Yakanan, John Henry Clark, Pan-Africanism. You never let us forget that Africa was our motherland, that their freedom was connected to our freedom. For all the times you taught us to be strong African men of substance, to not hate or cause harm to each other, and to focus on unity, we all thank you. Wild natural man of the sun, barefooted, dashiki wearing, confident black man, you taught us to be intelligent with our struggle, intelligent with our opposition to oppression, degradation, incarceration, human suffering, and subjugation. You taught us how to use our minds in times of war without bullets. For all the times you encouraged us to make our thoughts further than angry militants screaming hunky chants into dead-end rhetoric ciphers colliding with rhetoric mature enough to produce results. Truth and metaphor. Metaphoric soldier facing political war machines without fear, chest out like his natural hair. Whenever any of us needed him, Brother Mondo was there. For all the times you were suffering and in pain, but smiled when you saw us Harambe comrades, we salute you. For all the times we didn't say how much we valued you, we apologize. We didn't know Malcolm X personally, but we knew you. We saw firsthand how you worked to transform black males into African men, how you sacrificed your life to the principles of Malcolm X, Ben Yakanan, John Henry Clark, Harriet Tubman, Winnie Mandela, Betty Shabazz. For all the times we poured libation together, put African history programs together, Kwanzaa programs together, poetry programs together, African naming ceremonies together. We salute you. When Freedom Hour arrives, go in peace, be at peace. You taught us a life sentence doesn't have to be in vain, doesn't have to be about pain. Pain that defeats. For all the times you taught us to be strong African men, globally born, we all thank you. We all recognize you can't jail the spirit, because every day we saw you, we saw in the flesh how free a revolutionary be. How a Black Panther should be natural, free in his own skin, beautiful in his own skin, powerful in his own skin, insightful, never striking out unless provoked. Brother Mondo, we salute you for all the times, for all times.
One more.
My name is James Waters. Knew Dave Mondo since he was in grade school. Tremendous athlete. I went to the military, came out of the military, and went to a school called Fairbury, Nebraska, where they invited 13 black young men to come down there and play some type of sport. 4 guys from Omaha, 3 guys from Lincoln, 1 from New York, and 2 from Chicago. We had a psych social class, and it got pretty heavy, and people wanted to understand more about African American. I gave David a call, I gave Mondo a call, and said, would they like to come and see you and talk to you about the Black Panther Party? A busload of people from Fairbury came to Omaha, Nebraska, stayed in people's houses, stayed in the church at 25th and Evans. And I only have one request of Mondo. I said, Mondo, you know, the Dean of Women are coming. She's a little older, and she probably wouldn't understand the velocity of your swearing and all that kind of stuff. Could you tone that down? He looked at me and said, "You know me, Waters." Cool. Okay. You do what you do. We came here on a bus with 30 or 40 kids from Fairbury. And David entertained and talked the way that young lady just talked, that just got off the stage about those same subjects. He entertained those people for 2 days. Fairbury is a town of 5,000 white people and 13 of us. And in that whole time, he spoke to those kids. He talked about everything you guys have been talking about, how the oppression is still relevant. And I'm going to end with this. At the end of that conversation, Dave looked at me as we were loading back on the bus to go back down to Fairbury, Nebraska. He never spoke one swear word. He never cussed one time. And as I walked by him, I just smiled. I said, "Thank you." He goes, "Anytime, brother."
Thank you, Brother Waters, and all of you have given remarks today. I want to point out just a couple things. These paintings up here are prints of the originals that Mondo did. There's a website called mondo.info that has 30-some of those. And also, Linda Kenning put together a video which was playing before the memorial. It'll be playing after the memorial, so you'll be able to see on the screen, the wall there, you'll be able to see many of those paintings along with what else is on the video. I'd also like to thank you. You've met most of the people who were involved in putting this memorial together. There are a couple who didn't participate on the program that need acknowledgement. One is Ann Else, whose name was mentioned. She has done more work over the years for Mondo than probably any other person on the planet. She visited him multiple times a week. She served as a paralegal for Lennox Hines, who is his appellate attorney. I want to apologize for anything I left out or anybody I didn't mention that I should have. There are two others on the committee that I want to mention. One is my sister-in-law, Hakika. You know her better as Jennifer Keys, and also Marshall Taylor, who owns the bookstore. And I also want to thank the board members and the president of the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, which has this facility that they were so gracious with, allowing us to use. Now, as we close, ordinarily, I was interested in seeing, Mac, whether or not a preacher could actually say something in 2 minutes. Now I know the answer to that. Remarkable. I want to remind everyone that we really do need to continue what we were doing for Mondo, for Edward Poindexter. Don't let us forget that Edward is still in the joint. He served the same 45 years, going on 46 years, and we don't want to come together again, as was mentioned earlier, for this kind of a service for him. We want to see him free. Now, at most, what Mondo would call European ceremonies for the departed, there's usually a 21-gun salute. Well, being peaceful people, and since Mondo is peaceful, if you would all rise as we end, there will be refreshments at the end. If you would all stand for just a moment. Let's give Mondo the kind of salute that he would appreciate lifetimes. All power to the people. 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 All power to the Almighty people. All power to the Almighty people. Thank you very much for coming, and please enjoy the refreshments.
If you would like refreshments,